Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Gaffer in Gear. Today's episode, we're having a catch up and looking at the Vortex 4 made by Cream Source. Now, I've already reviewed the Vortex 8, so the Vortex 4 is pretty much half the size and half the output. So just a quick catch up on what this thing is. It's an RGBWW 1x1 panel. You can remove the diffusers and it has a native 20-degree beam angle. So it spots down, giving you an intense amount of light for long distance throws. Now in this episode, we're going to go over the subtle hardware differences between this and the original Vortex 8 that I reviewed. We're going to go over the software enhancements and improvements that have been added to the unit. We're also going to do a comparison between this and other similar sized form factor RGBWW panels. So we're going to do a quick comparison with the Nova P300C. A lot of you have asked me to do that because this is $1,000 cheaper. And we're also going to do a comparison with the light panel's Gemini 1x1 hard because this light also has a native spot. All right, so before we go on, usual sort of disclaimers. Cream Source did send me this light for the review and I do get to keep it. Now the other two lights here, both manufacturers have sent me one of these for review in the past and I did get to keep them, but I also have purchased a second one. So this is purchased with my own money and that one is purchased with my own money. All right, so let's get the review underway by talking about how much this thing costs and what you get for your money. So this sells for about 2,800 USD or about 4,600 Australian dollars. Now for that money, of course, you get the light, you get a regional power cable. Now the light is, without a doubt, the best built panel light I have ever come across. It is solid, so you get a very well constructed light. You get also some diffusers, so you get a flat diffuser that you can pop in, and you also get a dome diffuser. So the reason you got the dome diffuser is with the flat diffuser, you can still make out the light sources if you've got it in reflection, whereas if you put the two together, you get a nice even light source over the front. So 2,800 US dollars. Now to give you some idea of price, the Aperture Nova P300 here is about 1,000 US dollars cheaper, but this is a native floodlight only. Okay, it's got a fixed diffuser. You can't change it to a spot mode. And to give you some idea of why I actually think that the Vortex here, despite being $1,000 more expensive than the Aperture Nova P300 here, why I think this is really good value for money is if you compare it to the light panel's Gemini, which I own and love, and it has its own unique strengths over this thing. Once you factor in a a CRMX dongle into the equation and put that in, this is actually more expensive than the Vortex. All right, so let's go over the few hardware improvements that they've made to the Vortex 4 here since I originally reviewed the Vortex 8. And the big thing for me is the Vortex 4 has way more ventilation or drainage. As fast as water can go into it, water can come out of it. Now the next thing that's been improved is on the corners here, it has a new locking mechanism or joining mechanism. So you can get brackets for these, so you can mount all the lights together like a big Lego construction. So you can have a bracket here to mount 2 together or 4 together, and that bracket system has a twist lock release system in it. So if you have the original Vortex 8s and they don't have that system, you can buy an update system or an upgrade system to convert to the new locking mechanisms. Now let's go over some of the firmware improvements that have been made since I did the original review on the Vortex 8. Now these guys gave me a list of 38 improvements to let you know about. Now 30 of those 38 improvements went so far over my head they were taking satellites out of orbit. So this is an extremely sophisticated light. You could use this, for example, on sets where it needs to be networked into something like a volumetric studio. Now, I don't do stuff like that. I'm a corporate and commercial guy, so I don't understand that stuff, so I'm just going to give it a miss. But I'm going to go over some of the improvements that I think the majority of viewers would want to know about if you're considering these lights. They've added additional RDM support for wired and wireless DMX in your crossover modes, operating manually, such as CCT HSI and CCT RGB, you can now crossfade in to a custom CCT point. So you can dial in any CCT point you want with a plus minus green value, and you can crossfade to that point. Now, the next thing that's an improvement is it's got finer CCT tunability. You can now adjust the CCT in 10 Kelvin increments. Now, the next improvement is something that I think people who work in studios or TV stations in particular will really love. You can save 4 DMX settings or 4 DMX presets into the light. So with those user presets, you can save your DMX address, your DMX profile, your smoothing mode. You can save the DMX curve, and you can save your SACN universe information as well. So you could have this running in the studio, running off your studio preset that you've got saved. Then you could pull it out of the studio, take it onto location, and just press a few buttons in the menu and load up the DMX presets that work with your Gaffer's control box, for example. So how cool is that? The next thing is you can save settings and presets to a USB stick. So you can save all of the light settings to a USB stick. So what that means is you could save all those settings onto the stick, rent this out to somebody, and when it comes back, put your stick back in, and the light will be set up exactly how you like it set up, with all your dimmer curves and things like that that you like. The next improvement is you've got power out over the USB port. So if you want to run something like a network dongle, you can now power it off the USB. The next thing is a battery limiter. So you can set the DC input to not draw more than a certain amount of power. So this comes in handy if you don't have batteries that are powerful enough to run this, and this is 325 watts, or you've got a shoot that's going to go for a long duration and you want to manage your batteries. And the last thing that's an improvement for this is frame sync. Frame sync means that you can, with an additional device or additional hardware you can plug into this, you can sync it to the camera shutter. So every time the camera takes a frame, the light pulses. But not only that, the duration of the pulse on the light matches the frame on the camera. So you get absolutely no flickering or tearing. Now with the Vortexes, they've taken that to the next level. It's called frame sync, and you can turn the light on and off frame accurately in shot. All right, so let's go through the pros and cons now, and let's go through the cons to get those out of the way first. Now, the reason you're probably considering the Vortex 4 over, say, the Vortex 8 is maybe you're looking for something smaller and more portable. Smaller and more portable probably means that you're looking for something you can run off batteries. Now, one of the big limiting factors with this light is the DC inlet is 48 volts only. Now, I really want to use this out on location, so here's how I've been working around it. I've been using the Aperture 2-bay power station. So this was designed to power the Nova P300 here. So this thing uses 2 high-capacity V-mount batteries to give you a regulated 48 volts out. Now, here's the best bit. This costs under $200 US. Now, you don't have to, but I would recommend buying the lightning clamp as well to mount it to your stand. I think that's around 50 bucks. So with your 2 batteries, you can easily power a light, say 350 watts or below, assuming that your batteries are high capacity. Now, I own 2 Aperture lights that require this to run off batteries, but I own 8 of these power bays because I've got so many 48 volt lights, and this was such a cheap alternative to other solutions that were out there. Cheap because I already owned the batteries. Now, the next step is you're going to need an adapter cable to go between this port and the power station. So I got the good guys at Technical Art Solutions in Melbourne to make up this cable for me. And just plug this all in. Now, one sort of negative, next possible negative with this light, if you're working in a hurry, sort of run and gun situation, is, I'll just power it up. It does take a little bit of time to boot up, so it's got to go through its operating system. So as you can see, that is a little bit time consuming. And there we go. But anyway, I am now running this light off 2 V-mount batteries relatively cost effectively. The next negative is to do with using this as a floodlight. So let's say, for example, you want to floodlight a cyc wall. This might not be as bright as you're anticipating it to be. All right, so here's how this works. It's a 20-degree concentrated beam, a lot of firepower. And to get it to flood, you then drop a diffuser in. So when the light hits that diffuser, it spreads out. But because it's such a highly concentrated beam, you need a very dense diffuser to get the light to spread. So there you can make out where my hand is, but you can't really see my hand all that clearly. Whereas if we have a look on the diffuser that's on the Light Panels Gemini here, you can see where my hand is, you can see my blood vessels, you can see my fingerprints. There's a lot more transmission through this diffuser. So as a result, overall, the light panels light here, even though it is 125 watts less power draw or less LEDs behind it, it can output more light in a flood. Now here's something a lot of people don't know about floodlight LED panels. So this one, the aperture here, is a floodlight it can't spot. The panel on the front here, the diffusion surface, isn't so much a diffuser. It's actually just there to mix all the colored LEDs together to get you one homogeneous color. The transmission rate on these diffusers is usually up around 92 to 94%. So, you know, I say again, possible negative. Maybe you don't need a load of firepower if you're lighting up a large area, but if you're looking to do it with these, it might not be as bright as you're anticipating it to be for the power consumption. All right, so let's go over the pros now with the Vortex. And look, the first overwhelming pro is the build quality. There's just nothing that compares to a Vortex. So look, these units here, they're built very well, but this thing is just, it's solid as hell. You know, and I feel free to smack the crap out of it, because if I do break it, I know they'll give me another one for the review. But so I can hammer the crap out of these, and I've given them a real rough time. They are solid. So if you're working on an action film or something like that where things are blowing up and there's debris possibly hitting lights, you want the Vortex if you want to go a second take, whereas I don't think these things would be up to it. Also in terms of grit and stuff like that getting into the lights, the Vortex, you know, easily lives in a more harsh environment than these lights can. We'll go through a little bit of why that is in a sec. All right, the next overwhelming positive for me with this light, especially in comparison to the other two here, is it is the only one with built-in CRMX or lumen radio control. Now, in addition to that, if DMX is a crucial part of you running your sets or a crucial part of your workflow, the Vortex here has superior DMX control to the other two lights here. Now, if you're doing, say, an instant scene change, all three lights can do that very well. But if you're doing any sort of a transition, maybe a CCT transition, a fade up from black, or a color change that's happening over a few seconds, the Gemini 1x1 Hard absolutely sucks. It flickers a lot, it's shimmery. Look, I really do love this light. I own two of them, and the firepower is amazing. But I had a job the other day where I was using two of these to light an auditorium for a live event with the audience stuff. And then they said, Andrew, we want to fade the lights up and down on the audience. I had to change the lights because I didn't want to take the risk of someone having a photoepileptic seizure as a result of this thing flickering. It really is bad. It's like I'd expect from a DMX light 5 years ago. Now, in terms of the Aperture Nova here, that's hugely improved its DMX since I did the initial review. So if you're doing a scene change, you know, changing a CCT gently over a couple of seconds or 5 seconds, beautifully smooth. If you're changing from a CCT mode to a HSI, beautifully smooth. But if you're doing fade ups from black, it can be shimmery. Whereas this light can do everything very well. There is one slight negative with the DMX though. If you want instant changeovers, or if you want to have smooth changeovers, you might have to change the smoothing mode that's in the light. Now the next plus for the Vortex over the other lights here is the Vortex is the only one that has an IP rating, or a weather protection rating. Now how this thing works is through the center of it here, you have a void which is full of your cooling systems. So that's got all your heat sinks and your fans. Everything else is attached to that area via a gasket sealed environment. Okay, so all of your electronics that are in here are gasket sealed, so no water or no dust can get in, and it's the same with the light engine. So the front's got a gasket cover over it, which is connected to the heat sinks on the back. There's O-rings in place water can't get through, dust can't get through. Okay, so I've got the light here running off AC power. Now I'm going to turn it on, and I'm also going to turn the fans on so that the fans are running, so we can test the fans. And what I'm going to do is show you the how weatherproof this light is. All right, so I'm going to pour water into it. Now, I'm just going to put a disclaimer out here. I've got RCD protection in my fuse box, and because I don't trust nobody, I've got inline RCD protection here, making sure that if this thing does short circuit, my power will turn off in under 30 milliseconds. And I know it will because I've also run a test device on it to make sure the power turns off quickly. But this goes against every instinct I've got as a gaffer. All right, so water, let's go in through the top vents. Okay, and again, I'm not bullshitting you here. The light is turned on and running. All right, so let's pour it now into the fan vents. Okay. Now, with a lot of water-resistant lights, they are only water-resistant if the light is the correct way up on the stand, but not the Vortex. You can have this thing upside down and still it's weather-resistant. Now, because the electronics and the light engine are gasket sealed, it's not just rain protection that you get an advantage with the Vortex with. Anything that would be hostile towards electronics, such as salt air or even beach sand, you don't need to worry about that getting into the light and damaging those components because it can't possibly reach them. All right, so let's start going through the data I've collected for this episode and the comparison figures. Now, in terms of things like your TN30 color vector scores, color render averages, CCT averages, all that sort of stuff, just go to the Vortex 8 review that I did last year because it's the same light engine. All right, now let's have a look at how these two units compare against each other in their spot modes in terms of getting the maximum firepower. Now, just to point out, this thing is 20 degrees and this thing is 46 degrees. The Vortex is 325 watts and this is 200 watts. So you would expect the Vortex to completely kill the Gemini. And it does. At 3200 Kelvin, the Vortex comes in at 2.7 times the brightness of the Gemini 1x1 hard. At 5600 Kelvin, the Vortex comes in at 2.5 times the brightness of the Gemini. In primary red, the Vortex comes in at 7.4 times brighter than the Gemini. Set to primary green, the Vortex comes in at 4.6 times brighter than the Gemini. And set to primary blue, the Vortex comes in at 7.1 times brighter than the Gemini. All right, so let's have a look at how all three lights compare in terms of using them as a floodlight. So for example, if we're lighting a white cyc or a large area where we just want maximum spread. Now, as you would expect, the Vortex doesn't perform all that well with one exception, and that is primary blue light. With primary blue light, the Vortex is actually the brighter of the three lights. At 3200 Kelvin, the brightest light is the Gemini. It comes in at 81% brighter than the Nova and 3 times the brightness of the Vortex. At 5600 Kelvin, the brightest light again is the Gemini. It comes in at 93% brighter than the Aperture Nova and 3.4 times the brightness of the Vortex. Now, bear in mind, that's really surprising because it's only a 200 watt light engine and it's out punching a 300 watt Nova. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Let's have a look at red, green, and blue. When it comes to primary red, the Nova is the clear winner. It delivers 2.5 times more light than the Vortex and 2.3 times more light than the Gemini. Now with primary green, the winner again is the Gemini. It comes in at 51% brighter than the Vortex and 23% brighter than the Nova. And if you want to light an area with blue light, the winner is the Vortex. It comes in 29% brighter than the Gemini and 33% brighter than the Nova. All right, so that result really surprised me. I thought the Aperture Nova, being a floodlight, would be the brightest light in flood. All right, so I know quite a few people who are massive fans of the Vortex, and I've asked them, how do you deal with it not being as bright a light in flood when you put the diffuser in. And they made a very interesting point to me. They said, Andrew, if you're lighting an actor, you don't light them with a 1x1. You'd probably light them through a 4x4 diffusion frame. Now, if you get the Vortex and take the diffuser out and use it raw LEDs like it is now in its spot, and punch that into the diffuser and have the light far enough away that it lights up the whole diffusion surface, this will give you just as much light, if not more, than you would get out of the same powered floodlight up close to the diffuser. So I thought I'd give that a go. Now here's the thing that surprised me. I took the f-stop reading 1 meter in front of the diffuser, and all three lights gave me very similar results. The 1x1 Gemini gave me an f8 at 400 ISO. The Aperture Nova P300 gave me f8 at 400 ISO. And the Vortex gave me f8 and 1/10 at 400 ISO. Okay, let's go through all of the brightness results I've taken for this unit, starting off with no modifier on it at a distance of 3 meters. Now let's take a look at the results at a distance of 1 meter with the flat diffusion. Now let's take a look at the results at a distance of 3 meters with the flat diffusion. Now let's take a look at the results at a distance of 1 meter with the dome diffuser. Now let's take a look at the results with the flat diffusion and with the dome diffusion in combination at a distance of 1 meter. These are the results with the flat diffusion and the dome diffusion at a distance of 3 meters. Well, that's another gear review done. I hope I've given you enough information to decide if this light is for you or not. Now, it doesn't tick boxes for everybody, but this light can tick boxes that no other light can tick, particularly if you're looking to use lights in a hostile environment or have a light that can give you a load of firepower into a spot. I'm Andrew Locke. See you on the next episode of Gaffer and Gear.